me go. I don't know. I don't like this. I don't want it. I want to go home. Please let me out, please.
Human trafficking is the second most lucrative crime in the world, second only to narcotics trafficking.
He's beat me, he's raped me.
It's just like somebody paying for a slave.
Human trafficking is real. This little girl, she's not just a bad kid. She's a kid that's been dealt a bad life.
It is nothing like you think it is.
Human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise behind drugs. 700,000 people annually are trafficked across international borders. Half of those people are trafficked into the United States. 70% of human trafficking victims are female, and 50% are under the age of 18. 1 out of 236 people are victims of human trafficking. The U.S. is one of the top destination countries for human trafficking. In the U.S., states such as California, New York, and Texas, and the city of Las Vegas are preferred areas for traffickers attempting to establish their business. The numbers show human trafficking is active in our world today, yet it is an unknown topic among the majority of the population. Most people don't even know that it exists.
When my daughter was 11, she came to me and she said, "Mommy, did you know that there were girls that were being sold for sex that are my age in this country?" I was like, I think there's a mistake. That doesn't happen here. After that, it was just, I remember I was stuck to the computer for days. Story after story after story, and I couldn't believe that I didn't know.
In this documentary, we will be focusing on sex trafficking within the United States, the largest and most profitable industry within human trafficking.
Would you say that there's a difference between prostitution and trafficking?
Trafficking is the manufacturing of children for the sex trade. They're just getting sold and passed on from one exploiter to the other. And a lot of times it's because they don't know another life after this.
Sex trafficking is not a modern problem. The sale, movement, confinement, and trafficking of individuals is documented in biblical times, when women and children were the victims of trade in a patriarchal system of authority. Sex trafficking is simply a modern form of the practices that were established a long time ago. Today, thousands of individuals are trafficked around the world and into and within the United States, just as the case with African American slaves in the 1600s. The modern slaves are mostly from Latin America, Mexico, countries of former Soviet Union, and Southeast Asia. However, many victims of human trafficking in the United States were born here as well. American trafficking is unique among advanced democracies because the victims are younger and more often than not born within the United States. These new slaves are victimized by the force through rape, beatings, confinement, or by fraud involving false offers of employment or marriage. If they will come to the United States, other traffickers make threats of violence against the victim or the victims, families, or threats of legal processes such as deportation from the United States.
But her trafficker made sure she knew leaving was not an option.
He was like, "You ain't going nowhere." And I was like, "You want to bet?" And then he went to the other room, came back with a gun, and he was like, "If you go somewhere, we'll see." He said, "I bet you'll be back tomorrow. I bet. I bet."
You may be wondering why and how this business is so successful. Human trafficking has flourished due to the lack of employment opportunities, poverty, economic imbalances among regions of the world, corruption, decline of border controls, gender and ethnic discrimination, and political instability and conflict. The business of human trafficking is built on widespread individual human suffering. Yet human trafficking is hard to combat because its financial advantages for many legal businesses. For many people, it is an easy way to make quick cash. Traffickers receive great financial gains from the system.
What is it with underage girls? Why do pimps make more money off them? Why are there so many underage girls?
They're easily manipulated. They're young, they're naive, but the price they pay is horrendous.
When they take 1 pound of drug, they will sell it once. When they take a girl, they will sell this girl 30, 40, 50 times a day, many days without rest.
They're only thinking about themselves and not about anything else, only their immediate needs.
And so not about these girls?
No, they're not even, no, it's just an object.
According to the United Nations, human trafficking generates $9.5 billion annually and is a $32 billion industry. Traffickers can make anywhere from $1 million to $8 million in a period ranging from 1 to 6 years. Human trafficking is obviously a very profitable and flourishing business, but what exactly is it, and how does it work? Human trafficking and or modern slavery are terms that have been used to describe the act of recruiting, harboring, transporting, providing, or obtaining a person for compelled labor or commercial sex acts through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. People are considered trafficking victims regardless if they were born into the state of servitude, were enslaved in their hometown, were transported and exploited, consented to work for a trafficker, or committed a crime as a result of being subjected to trafficking. A victim of human trafficking perceives himself or herself as defenseless, perceives a lack of support from the U.S. authorities, and thus never attempts to report abuse to law enforcement. Victims of sex trafficking are forced into prostitution, pornography, military prostitution, spousal prostitution, and or sex ring tours, with forced prostitution being the most common form. Approximately 50,000 of these women are trafficked into the United States on an annual basis. The majority of these victims are underage girls. Even though there are different types of sex trafficking, the common element is that all traffickers have total physical and psychological control over their victim.
They're running away from a home that they're not valued. They're experiencing some sort of trauma in that home that they are not content with. They want to escape. And so they show them a good life, maybe for 2 days, and then they're in.
Victims face physical abuse, emotional abuse, health risks, and sexual coercion. They often do not receive proper food, safe shelter, or medical attention. Poor living conditions makes the victims all the more dependent on the traffickers for merely keeping them alive. The situation is unavoidable for victims of sex trafficking because they are dependent on the traffickers and are scared they will be killed if they try to run away. For many victims, this is the only life that they know and are comfortable living. But how do these people become victims of sex trafficking? And how does the system work? In the United States, most human trafficking organizations are smaller units of 1 to 5 individuals who identify, transport, house, and prostitute the victims of sex trafficking. However, in some cases, larger criminal networks, more than 50 people, may be involved in the international to national trafficking of persons from one location to another. The trafficking of an international victim involves special individuals who can create false documentations, are involved in the criminal network, individuals employed by the transportation authorities who cannot report abnormalities, and individuals involved in immigration with the power of discretion. Unless the victim reports the abuse or a law enforcement officer discovers the case, those victims are essentially undetectable and easily moved by car, plane, and so on throughout the country. In many cases, the female being trafficked is a runaway and does not intend to return home because they find security within sex trafficking. Traffickers lure the victims in with gifts and sense of security. Then they proceed to sell them into the sex trafficking market. The trafficker controls not only the sexual exploitation of his or her sex worker, but also his or her worker's movements and choice to work or not to work. Victims do not have the ability to end prostitution when they choose to begin another lifestyle. Many victims are lured by promises of a better life in the United States. The traffickers use a website called Backpage to advertise their victims that they traffic. They place them under the subcategory of escorts. Backpage profits went up by $1 million the first month that Craigslist took down their adult services section. Backpage is projected to earn $20 million annually.
Well, I mean, I believe that Backpage is responsible for this. I mean, again, it should be taken away. The whole thing doesn't have to
Just
be
the
gone.
escort section.
Yeah, the escort section, the adult section should be gone.
So you're saying Backpage just normalizes the whole process?
Yes.
You go on, you buy furniture, you find a job, you buy a girl.
Yes.
Trafficking most occurs in big cities such as Los Angeles, New York City, Atlanta, and Las Vegas. Victims of sex trafficking are found in highly visible venues such as street prostitution, massage parlors, spas, and strip clubs. And the public knows that they are there. What the general public does not know is that the victims are in these areas without choice. Some victims also work out of less visible venues. They may work out of business or private homes and be called to prostitute for high-powered corporate employees or government employees. In countries of origin, characteristics such as poverty, unemployment, war, and oppression are all associated. With fueling the market for sex trafficking, one common method of recruiting women for sex trafficking is by placing an advertisement in local newspapers for nannies or waitresses in the United States. Learn the red flags that may indicate human trafficking, and ask follow-up questions so that you can identify a potential trafficking victim. Sex trafficking indicators include living with employer, poor living conditions, inability to an individual alone, answers appear to be scripted or rehearsed, unpaid or paid very little, and under 18 and in prostitution. Some questions to ask are, can you leave your job if you want to? Can you come and go as you please? Have you been hurt or threatened if you tried to leave? Has your family been threatened? Do you live with your employer? Where do you sleep and eat? Are you in debt to your employer? Do you have passport or identification? Who has it? Every 30 seconds, another person becomes a victim of human trafficking. If you believe you have identified someone still in the trafficking situation, alert law enforcement immediately. It may be unsafe to attempt to rescue a trafficking victim. In the United States, call 911 or the National Human Trafficking Resource Center at 1-888-373-7888, 24/7 to get help and connect with a service provider in your area.